Hello and welcome to Barbara's podcast. This is the show for women, all about health, nutrition, and wellness. It's the show that will empower you and inspire you to create a healthier lifestyle.
Welcome. I'm Barbara Carafocus, and I'm excited to introduce Dawn Symons, who is a writer, thinker, and coach behind the First Aid for Stress and MIGA Therapy. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. It's lovely to be here.
You mentioned struggling with various forms of stress, including ME, burnout, toxic relationships, and physical pain. How did these challenges influence the development of the tools and techniques you now offer?
Well, even from an early age, when I started my A-levels, I was very interested in the human body and how it worked. And when I studied psychology, I had a lot of input and also a lot of questions. And as my life developed, I developed ME and fibromyalgia. I also experienced the anxiety and depression. And I also had thyroid cancer, as well as being a busy mum. And life is crazy when you've got 3 children. But when I literally completely burnt out and was collapsed for 18 months, I had to understand what was going wrong in order to begin to put it right. And for me, taking prescription medication wasn't the long-term solution, short-term perhaps, but certainly not the long-term solution. And I recognized that I needed to make great changes to pretty much everything in my life. And that's what I did. And it's been really helpful because the ideas that I've had about how the body and mind work, I've been able to test my theories with my own clients throughout the last 20 years. And saw that there was massive common denominators for us all. And that if we were to address these common denominators, that actually life would be a lot more simple and a lot more quiet, both mentally and physically. Our body is a barometer to the quality of our thinking. So if we're stressed and anxious or depressed, obviously, that affects the way that our body mechanics is working. It affects the chemicals, it affects the muscles. And before we know it, we can be feeling really unwell. And it can seem like we've got a plethora of symptoms and no idea of actually what to do. And that's what the First Aid for Stress was devised for, a simple program, whether you self-study or whether you work with me in the group or in person, but it's a step-by-step supported guidance. Try this. If this works, then keep doing it. If it doesn't, try this, try this, try this. So there's loads of different options. There's some really strong foundational information that once you know, you can't unknow. And they basically build your fortification, your resilience, and things just improve in time. And I never would have thought that it was possible. And I've helped so many other people. And I thought, can I help myself? Can this really work for me? And over the last 10 years particularly, it has been life-changing. And it's built something within me that I haven't slid back, even when things have got completely out of hand. The symptoms that I would have experienced previously aren't there. I might experience them short term, but A, I know what they are. B, I know I can do something about it and it will pass. And it does. And so it builds great confidence. And that's what allows me to come forward and say, you know what, guys, there are solutions for most things that we are experiencing.
Absolutely. There's research done out there that most diseases, do stem from stress, 80% of it. I would like to ask you, what are the key components and the underlying principles that guide your approach in the First Aid for Stress program?
As you rightly said, stress is the cause for so many diseases, and science finally is coming forward with that, to catch up with that notion, because a lot of us have felt that for a very, very long time. I think that that the biggest thing is that stress doesn't actually exist. That sounds a bit crazy maybe, and a lot of us experience it, but stress in itself is a disease. What we're actually doing is we are taking situations and we're playing them out in our mind, and we're looking into the future and projecting, and we're looking back to the past and worrying. And rather than staying in the here and now and being proactive and clear in a place where there's solutions or nothing to do, we cause our body to feed our mind and our brain, and this creates that continual loop. And it's a bit like putting your foot on the pedal of the accelerator of a car and not changing gear and just carrying on pressing down, down, down. And
Yes.
before we know it, something's going to fail. I say that the body is your car and you're the driver, but actually you're driving it from afar, not actually in person. And I think that for me, the concept of understanding that we're more than just our body and mind, and that there is something else, and it's that invisible somethingness of what's behind it, whether we call it soul, whether we call it energy, whether we call it God, whatever we're going to call it, that's our real self. And the more that we connect to that, where we have that, infinite stillness and peace and wisdom, if more we connect to that as opposed to being in our body, then that's the place to work from. And the more we connect to that, the more we learn to connect to that, and we continue to connect to that, so things just drop away.
I believe that I was going to say, in the busy lifestyle, modern living, people get caught up in the rat race and they become very disconnected from their body, whereas our body can be an excellent barometer of what's happening in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we get caught up, it's the mental activity. To me, I say to people, the body should be the thing that's moving and the mind should be the thing that's still. And quite often in modern day life, it's reversed and it causes a lot of problems. And I think that body work, massage particularly, is very useful because it's actually cleaning out the body. It's letting go of the tensions that are offering up the recipes of the previous stresses. It's letting go of the chemical recipes. It's letting go of everything. And that in itself helps to quieten the mind and feel relaxed. And of course, if we're quieter in our mind and feeling more mentally and physically relaxed, our IQ is in a different place. Yes. We're making classier choices.
Yes. What have you got any tools or tips for our listeners for alleviating stress, changing our perceptive or our thoughts or the way we may look at a situation, a technique or two?
Oh goodness, there's so many that I use. I think that if we're getting really anxious and really stressed out, focusing on our breath is the simplest and most effective thing to do, because at the end of the day, that's all we've got. If we watch that breath go in and out, and we're putting our focus on that, that is a great, great start. I think remembering that what we're experiencing is basically a thought field, and that when we've got entangled into either a negative or positive aspect, our thoughts will merely reflect what our body is feeling, up or down. So, it's only got so many feelings, it's only got so many sensations, and the same feelings for fear or trepidation are exactly the same for anticipation and excitement. So it's very much about really reading the room. Really, are you in the now? are you in the here and now, or are you in a load of mental activity? Breathing is great. Tapping is very good. EFT with the tapping points, because that will help to balance the body. I think taking time out if you're having a difficult moment or a difficult conversation, it's about just going to the bathroom or just getting out of that situation and recentering and grounding yourself.
I find that
also
works for me. I take a walk to the park. A little walk in the park, even if it's 10 minutes. It's
and take your shoes off and allow your body to function as it's supposed to. We've got 7,000 nerve endings on each foot. So to have a rubber sole on the bottom of our actual foot is crazy, because it's not actually allowing the flow of the energy to go back into the earth. So when we're walking barefoot, it's wonderful. Listening to some music, just anything really, just taking that time out and getting that headspace is really important. And as I said, to me, I think Reiki or body work is super, super important.
Yes. I'm struggling with my sleep at the moment. I wake up a couple of times a night. I don't know if it's menopause or if it's a mixture of things. And I know a lot of people that struggle with their sleep. Do you, have any tips for that, or something that you could help people who struggle and don't sleep very well, or restless sleep?
It's a common thing, and it's one of those things that there's sort of stages to, if we've been stressed out for a while, there's stages we go through, and I think insomnia and difficulty staying asleep is one of them. So there's loads of ideas really, and I guess it depends on whether you're menopausal or not, because if you're menopausal, my advice would be go to YouTube and look up Mindy Peltz, or get the menopause reset book that she's done. It's wonderful. If it's I think if you're having problems sleeping, a lot of the times, if you're worried, before you go to bed, get a piece of paper, write down everything that you're going to do tomorrow, and just write down anything that's going through your head right now, and just basically brain dump it. I always listen to a meditation before I go to bed. I've got my own meditations that I recorded, and I listen to those. It's a complete body relaxation and then quietening the mind. And I mean, I've got several of my clients that listen to it and say that they've never actually heard the end of it because they're completely asleep by that point. I think the obvious things like ditching coffee or alcohol, not drinking coffee after lunchtime, not having the carbs and sugars later on in the day, because obviously they affect our insulin and our sleep. Obviously blackout blinds and all of those sort of things. But I think the biggest thing, I think, is actually to release the tension and reset your body before you go to sleep. And if there is something worrying you, is it something that's really important? Is it going to be something that's going to be important next year, in 10 years' time? Put things into perspective. If it is going to be something that's important and you need to look at it, then just spend 10 minutes just thinking, what do I need to do to get this solved? And it's like looking at really hard facts. I always say when it's something important, to really look at it, treat it like a business transaction. What is the end result and how do I get there? And if you don't know how to get there, then reach out to somebody that can help you. There's always step-by-step incremental things that you can do.
Well, thank you. I think I'll be applying definitely the tip regarding writing it all down, because I think that's what happens when you lie down, you put your head on the pillow and you get all these busy thoughts. Yeah.
The other thing to try is just noticing the thought. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to bed and you're going to sleep. So these thoughts are meaningless. So just notice it as it comes up. We have to remember that the thoughts are just like clouds passing in the sky. They're just, if we pay attention to them, then our attention's going to be drawn to them, and we're going to follow them across the sky. We're going to give meaning to them. But when we ignore those thoughts. It's just like, oh, that's a thought about that. That's a thought about that. And look for that space between the thoughts. Remember that we're the sky, we're not the clouds. Endless, infinite, and get into that, what I call NDS space, that neutral default setting space. And if you'd like, you can try my meditation. You could go to my website, firstaidforstress.com, and sign up, and you can get the introduction to NDS, which will give you a full body relaxation and a way to just ignore those thoughts. It's really helpful.
I do use that, to be honest. Listen to meditation, and it does really help.
So I've always been very lucky in the respect that I live in a beautiful place called Cornwall, in the UK, and I'm in a very rural place. So I've always had very clean food in the respect that it's been locally grown, homegrown, local meat, local fish, local dairy products. So I guess I've always eaten a really clean diet.
Yeah.
Yes, I've overeaten on sugary things and that sort of thing, but there have been changes that I've had to make, and I've tested and I've trialed for a while. Does this work? And I've sort of given it 2-3 months, and then no, that doesn't work. And then so it is. I think nutrition is really important if you're eating lots of processed foods and lots of takeaways and lots of junky sort of things. I think it's really important because at the end of the day, it's all chemicals that we're ingesting or consuming.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not been something that I've dived down. But on saying that, it is. So with the First Aid for Stress program, I've got an 8-area wheel. I call it the healing wheel.
Yes.
And you literally pick one area at a time to work through. And there's 100 things to do on that wheel. And so when you first do your first wheel, you can see exactly areas that are really empty or much fuller, and you can choose the area. So the nutrition area is an area that I haven't really hit that much. But with the menopause, what I've noticed is that I've put on weight, and which was why I'd got this menopause reset book from Mindy Peltz.
Yeah.
And it's talking about the intermittent fasting. And it's something that I'd realized that I've done for years, just because I've been busy with work and children, and the times of eating was very slim. So I never had a weight issue, but I have had more recently. And I noticed that my eating habits have changed, or times of eating, and that I'm probably eating much more over the day, and it's had an impact. So it is something, and I think particularly when we're menopausal, we have to look at a lot of avenues as to, the changes in the estrogen, progesterone, how that's affecting our weight, how it's affecting our sleep. And like I said, I go to the experts with that, and that Mindy Peltz, I think, is the one. Absolutely brilliant. Love her book.
Really, I'll look her up as well.
And she's got a great YouTube. You don't have to. She's got a really, really good YouTube channel, so you don't have to buy her book. So that's if you prefer to watch. Thinking about one of the things actually that I suggest with people is calcium and magnesium.
Yeah.
Both for sleep issues and great for menopause as well.
Yeah.
Magnesium's the nature's tranquilizer, and obviously calcium is wonderful too, and helps us to balance. And a lot of people say zinc as well. So those would be the 3 minerals that I would suggest looking into and putting into your diet for, as I said, I think with anything with diet, you have to give it time to sort of fill in the gaps in your system to get to an optimum balance, to see if it's really the thing for you. And I think when we're stressed, the body heavily utilizes vitamin C in the stress process. And that's why, or one of the reasons why, we get more prone to infections.
Yeah.
So I always say plenty of vitamin C when when in your really stressy times. So I think that's important.
In closing, how could someone reach out to you and contact you? Would you like to share your website or any other socials on Instagram?
Yes, please do contact me. I've got a wonderful Instagram page, which is First Aid for Stress. My website is first-aid-for-stress.com. And my email is dawn@maga, MAGA-therapy.com. And Maga is the Cornish word for nurture, nourish and feed. And that's my studio, and that's my overall brand name. But First Aid for Stress is a strand of that, but something that I very much enjoy doing.
Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Barbara, for inviting me.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Barbara's podcast. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter or e-courses. Celebrate life, and see you at the next episode.